I call the meeting of the Agricultural, Finance, and Policy Committee to order. A quorum is present. Members, we have a lot of work to do today, and we want to try to get through all of these bills. When we had the snow day, what was that, a week ago? Co-Chair Anderson and I had an agreement that one of the bills that was scheduled that day, which was that fish disease bill, we put on the ag policy bill, and then I committed to him that we would hear his ethanol bill today. So that was an agreement we had, and hopefully we can get through so all bills can be heard. We have heard some of these bills before, so we will not be taking testimony on a couple of them. First up, we need to approve the minutes. Representative Frederick, have you looked at the minutes and would you like to move them?
I have, Mr. Chair, and so moved.
Representative Frederick moves the minutes for March 23rd, 2026. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it, and the minutes are approved. First up, we have House File 3828, Representative Falconer, pesticide provisions modified to protect wild rice water. Welcome, Representative Falconer. I will move House File 3898 to be before the committee. Representative Falconer, I believe you have an A1 author's amendment. Can you explain the amendment briefly?
Yes, thank you, Chair. A1, so we have to both amendments at one description, or just
We're going to do the A1 first, and then we'll do the
okay. Yeah, A1, just after consultation with Minnesota DNR and Ag and some stakeholders, we just had some feedback. Just wanted to get it a little bit of clarification on what we're talking about as far as removing some of the what turned out to be a little bit large of a fiscal cost within the research area of it, implications. So kind of cut some of that stuff out and just brought in line more so of what we were trying to achieve. So
I will move the A1 amendment to get the bill in the form the author would like. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Ayes have it. The motion, the A1 amendment is adopted. Representative Falconer, I believe you have the A2 author's amendment. Could you explain that amendment briefly?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Again, this is just a couple small changes. It's reflecting just wanting to make sure the language was similar where we're inserting some new changes and clarifying some of the intent. Yeah, so nothing too dramatic, just getting it in the shape that I wanted.
I will move the A2 amendment to get the bill in the form the author would like. Is there any discussion? Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative, couple of amendments here. One, you delete sediment and soil. This one, you've narrowed it as well. Are those an attempt to just reduce the cost of this bill?
Representative Falconer.
I'm sorry, the question was to reduce the cost?
Yeah, your two amendments take out working with sediment and soil, and the other one, I think, makes some changes as well to kind of narrow the scope.
Yeah. So
is the purpose of these two amendments taken together to lessen the cost of the bill?
Representative Falconer.
Thank you, Chair. That is one reason why, after consulting with the Department of Ag, that was just going to be a little bit too much. We all know what budget we're facing, so we decided to take that out for now. And then most everything else was just, like I said, was just clarifying, just getting language similar and intent in order.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion prevails. The A2 amendment is adopted. Representative Falconer, to your bill as amended.
Thank you, Chair. All right, thank you, Chair and Co-Chair and members of the committee for hearing this bill today. HF 3898 modifies pesticide provisions to protect wild rice. Wild rice, or manoomin to our Ojibwe relatives, or seed to our Dakota relatives, is also the state grain of the great state of Minnesota. It's culturally and spiritually significant and economically vital to our tribal nations. Keystone species of wetlands across the Great Lakes region. Habitat for many waterfowl and fish species. The majority of the commercialized crop of wild rice is grown in Minnesota for roughly about 60 million a year industry, and is, quite frankly, delicious. But as much as it is delicious and nutritious, our state grain is susceptible to environmental degradation. Wild rice thrives in clean, cool, shallow lakes and slow-moving streams. And as modern civilization pushed westward, wild rice's need for a delicately balanced system began to show significant signs of stress. Wild rice is sensitive to water levels and contaminants that put at risk from modern civilization's dams, roads, over-harvesting practices, invasive species, genetic engineering, climate change, and what we're focused on today in this bill, pesticides and herbicides. I have what I feel is a relatively simple bill as far as pesticides are concerned. HF 3898 just aims to ensure wild rice is considered within our pesticide environmental impact considerations, management plans, state uses, and education training programs. But as I've quickly learned in my time here, simple ideas tend to get complicated rather quickly. So I have what is my first attempt of bringing this bill of getting wild rice preservation to be considered when pesticides use plans are being decided. The bill starts out by defining what a wild rice water is, so we know what we're talking about. It ties enforcement the commissioner may take to existing law. And then the rest of sections 3, 4, 5, and 6 insert wild rice waters where they should be applied, and adding tribal consultation and cooperation where necessary. These additions clarify that the Department of Ag needs to include mitigation of pesticides drifting or flowing into wild rice waters. In management plans, be sure pesticides that are applied on state lands do not flow or drift into wild rice waters, and includes education and training programs, and as I said, directs tribal consultation and cooperation. So like I said, it's easy, right? So with that, I offer this bill as the beginning of, I offer this bill after discussion with the Department of Agriculture, DNR, and other related agencies and tribes, and so far, and I'm more than happy to meet with anyone on this. I believe we have, well, I know that we have some testifiers, and I'm happy to stand for questions, comments, or snide remarks should you choose. So thank you so much, and I look forward to the rest of our discussion today.
We have several testifiers. First up, Steve White, District 2 Representative, Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe. Welcome to the committee. State your name for the record.
Bonjour, co-chairs Hansen and Anderson, the members of the House Agriculture, Finance, and Policy Committee. I am Steve White. I serve as the elected council of the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe, representing District 2. I am here on behalf of the Leech Lake Band, and I'm proud to live on the Leech Lake Reservation, where the best wild rice in the state is harvested. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of House File 3898 and the broader efforts to protect the wild rice waters of Minnesota. Wild rice monomen is not just a natural resource for our people, it's essential to our identity, our treaty rights, and our way of life. It is sacred food that has been sustained to our communities for generations, and it remains vital to our culture, health, and economic today. We wanted the Agriculture Committee to understand that in addition to this culture importance, many band members' families rely on wild rice as a subsistence income every single year. In 2024 was a down year for Leech Lake Band, purchased 142,000 pounds of green rice from the harvesters to be processed at our own wild rice facility in Cass Lake. The last season's harvest figures were much more double that. The band purchased more than 300,000 pounds of green rice, putting $1.5 million into our local economy for hardworking families in our community. However, wild rice is extremely sensitive to environmental changes, particularly to water quality and chemical exposures. Pesticides, drift, and runoff pose real and growing risks of the waters where the rice grows. Once these waters are damaged, restoration is difficult, in some cases impossible. House File 3898 represents a meaningful step forward by modifying pesticides provisions to better protect the wild rice waters. The bill recognizes both the ecological importance of these ecosystems and the culture responsibilities to carry and to protect them. This is about preservation to our more effective, and far less costly to protect these waters now than to attempt to repair them later. We appreciate the committee's leadership on this issue. Respectfully urge you to support House File 3898 and related efforts to safeguard the wild rice for our future generations. May good for your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Leanna Goose, Rise and Repair. Welcome to the committee and state your name for the record.
Buju Nidanaway Maganadug, Makakakwe, Indigenous Cause, Makwinidu Dame, Gasaga, Squajamekognidu Jabab. Hello, my relatives. My name is Leanna Goose. I am Bear Clan from Leech Lake. I am a mother, an organizer, and facilitator within the Rise and Repair Alliance space. And I also work on a research project called Protecting Monoman for the Next 7 Generations in coordination with the Leech Lake Nation. I'm using our Anishinaabe language today because it is important to recognize that multiple cultures exist here in Minnesota. Respecting all cultures in our laws matters. The proposed laws we brought forward this year aim to ensure that the state does not erase Anishinaabe culture. At this moment, a cultural genocide is taking place. One research study notes that wild rice is decreasing by 5 to 7% annually in the Great Lakes region. And that is truly scary to me as a mother and someone who cares about these waters and the health of our ecosystems. This means that potentially wild rice could disappear in the next couple generations here if we do not change our ways. So when Anishinaabe culture is protected, it strengthens protections for all life in our state. Our lifeways remain deeply tied to the waters that sustain everyone, not only here in Minnesota, but across North America, as what happens here flows outward across the continent. According to the World Economic Forum, Indigenous nations make up 5% of the global population, yet they protect 80% of the world's remaining biodiversity. Like wild rice, Indigenous people are a keystone species. Protecting our cultures means protecting life itself. HF 3898 is critical to upholding Monoman's right to exist and thrive. This is our way of asking the state to please stop killing Monoman. Pesticides are poisons designed to kill plants, insects, and other pests. When these chemicals make their way into our waters and land, they can harm the other species that our cultures depend on. What happens when 2,4-D comes down in the rain over wild rice waters? Because it is coming down in the rain in some places, meaning pesticides have made their way into our water cycles. How does that impact the maple trees, the blueberries, and the other gifts of the land? 2,4-D is shown to harm wild rice at certain life stages. Wild rice thrives without the use of harmful chemicals or fertilizers. All it needs is clean water, like we do. It is truly a gift that must be protected and respected. Pesticides, especially neonicotinoids, pollute Minnesota's waterways, with 95% of surface waters testing positive, according to a study by the Natural Resource Defense Council. A 2022 study found neonicotinoids present in over 95% of pregnant women tested nationwide, with concentrations increasing over time. These chemicals do not stay contained. They cross the placenta and reach developing fetuses or unborn babies. Studies have detected neonicotinoids in children's blood, urine, and even spinal fluid, meaning they are reaching the most sensitive organs in the body. Research has linked prenatal exposure to these pesticides with birth defects of the heart and brain. We are calling on the state to do better for our children. In the Anishinaabe language, pollinators are called manidush, or little spirits, reflecting the respect that they deserve. Without pollinators, we would struggle to grow many of our foods. Many pollinator species are already endangered, so addressing the pesticide issue is urgent. Glyphosate is also making its way into wild rice waters by way of the state. The International Agency for Research on Cancer labels glyphosate as having the potential to cause cancer. The maker of Roundup, which contains glyphosate, has paid billions of dollars in lawsuits. This pesticide is known to kill all plants that it touches unless the seed is treated genetically. So this pesticide damages wild rice and likely harms human health. When wild rice is lost, it is not just one plant that disappears. It means less food and habitat for the many species that depend on it, like fish and ducks, and over 17 species listed in the Minnesota DNR's comprehensive list of species of greatest conservation need. On Leech Lake, we will be removing invasive species without harmful chemicals using mechanical methods. This summer, we'll hand pull invasive plants and reseed monomen where invasive species dominate. The goal is to remove invasives and restore native plants. Without replacement, invasives will return. Relying on chemical spraying to try to control invasive species leads to a harmful cycle of repeated chemical use, which is dangerous for ecosystems and human health. On Leech Lake, we are working to turn a problem into a solution. The invasive plants we remove this summer will be composted and used to create nutrient-rich compost to support local food systems. Reports also note that chemical fertilizers may be harder to come by because of the war overseas. The Carnegie Endowment for International Peace notes that a global food crisis could be created due to a lack of fertilizers getting through the Strait of Hormuz. By working towards the mechanical removal of invasive species like cattails and others, we can remove excess nutrients from our waterways, which are also a big problem for our state, and not only our state, but that problem flows all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, where there is a dead zone due to the overuse of chemical fertilizers. These nutrients can serve a purpose. Instead of harming aquatic ecosystems, they can be taken out to be used respectfully to strengthen local food systems, and this would create a closed loop system that supports both healthier waters and healthier communities. Wild rice, or monomen piscine, has taken care of people in this state for generations, and it can continue to do so if we take care of it. This legislation is about ensuring we do not poison our relative monomen and in turn ourselves. I hope that lawmakers choose to take this important step towards addressing the pesticide issue and pass House File 3898. Let's work together like our children's health and future depends on it, because it does. Miigwech Bizinawiyad. Thank you.
Buju, Gagagiyashi, Kindishnakas, Gawaba, Biganikag, and Dunjaba. My Ingan. My English name is Don Goodwin. My spirit name is Everlasting Wind, and that's why I made the decision to come and speak today. I felt that it was more important for my words to be in the wind rather than on paper. I am part of the Wolf Clan, and I take that so deeply that it is my duty as a Wolf Clan member to protect the environment and the people. I don't only speak for myself, I speak for my ancestors. I speak for my family and my community. Monomen Jesus encompasses my community and many other Anishinaabe communities. This is who we are. This is our relative that we are connected to. And we've been taught that if we take care of Monomen and Nibe, they will take care of us. Monomen is wild rice. Nibe is water. And so that's why it's so important for me to come here today because those are the two things. We got water, we got monomen, and that is what we are trying to protect. As an 8-year-old child, the only lesson I remember from school was water pollution, and it had me distraught. Dad, what are we gonna do if the water gets poisoned, polluted? And he says, don't worry, my girl. There's the Clean Water Act. So I went on with life, went to school, graduated from college, and then I realized and became aware of loopholes and that our water was being poisoned. We need to protect the waters, to protect our monomen. Monomen is a superfood. You could almost live entirely off monomen. The only nutrient that I know of that doesn't not have is vitamin C, which is water-soluble vitamin. Like I said, my whole community, their whole being in life is surrounded upon monomen. I'm not going to leave you with one of our little jokes, because humor is important. Humor gets us through. Love gets us through. We want you and others to love monomen, to love water, and do what you need to do to protect it. Be bold. Over 60% of our water is polluted with PFAS. What happened to the Clean Water Act? We need to be strong and uphold these laws that were put in place. So I encourage you to support 3898. I want to say a special note to our ricers today. And I send this message for all of them to continue to be who we are. And I'll do my best to be who I am and send this message. Creator wanted us to live a certain life. And it is my duty as mainga nindudem to protect that, to protect the life, the sustainable life that Creator intended us to live. Miigwech.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who wants to testify for or against this bill? Welcome. State your name for the record.
Hanim Buju, Makade Mako and Dudum, Anishinaabe and Dunjaba, Mikanako Jean Iniwake, Gina Peltier, Dijnakash. So my name is Gina Peltier. I am an organizer with the Rise and Repair Alliance, and I'm testifying in support of this bill. Quite honestly, we never needed pesticides, and Indigenous people have proven this. Large Indigenous nations have thrived since time immemorial, cultivating beautiful gardens and farming the land without using any pesticides or poisons, and without taking any nutrients out of the land. You know, contrary to the myth that we were primitive Indians, you know, we were not passive observers of nature, nor were we wandering bands of nomads looking for a berry to eat or a deer to hunt. We were active agents of shaping the land to produce prolific abundance. We expanded and designed grasslands and forests for the benefit of all life, and in many places we still do this. Not only do we have our oral history to prove this, we also have our archaeological evidence to prove this. One Kentucky sediment record story shows how Shawnee ancestors took care of chestnut food forests for over 3,000 years straight, designed for perpetuity. Why plan for just the next fiscal quarter when we can plan for generations not yet born? Indigenous farmers in Southwest deserts leveraged the pre-existing topography of the land by placing their fields at the base of the watersheds to catch every drop of water from the monsoon rains and all the nutrients that flow down with them. This alluvial farming technique required no outside fertilizers or irrigation because all of this comes with the rain. By tapping into pre-existing natural systems, Native farmers have been able to cultivate the same plots of land for centuries without depleting the soil. Indigenous peoples have intentionally augmented grasslands for the buffalo by bringing gentle fire to the Great Plains. Many people think that we followed the buffalo, when in fact the buffalo followed our fire. Coastal nations in British Columbia enhance fish habitat by planting kelp forests where their herring lay the eggs. By seeding this food web and feeding all life around them, these coastal communities had more food safety for themselves because they fed the hand that feeds them. These systems are even more efficient than industrial food systems we have today because they protect and augment the very things that give us life instead of extracting and destroying them. Why try to control the earth when you can work with her? Unfortunately, the United States government has oppressed indigenous traditional ecological knowledge to enforce settler colonialism, prioritize Western scientific ideology, and facilitate land exploitation. By dismissing this traditional ecological knowledge as inferior or superstitious, the U.S. justified land disposition, banned sustainable practices like cultural burning, and replaced stewardship with capitalist resource extraction models. This has resulted in severe ecological degradation, loss of biodiversity, and increased vulnerability while severing indigenous connections to the land and disrupting sustainable land management practices, hindering effective environmental stewardship, and it perpetuates health declines among all communities. Right now, the number one and the number two cause of death for Americans is diabetes and cancer. Right now, the DNR sprays glyphosate on our cattails. We use cattails for food, we use cattails for building materials, we use cattails for medicines. And we have, for thousands of years, harvested it in such a respectable manner that we never had to worry about it being an invasive species. This bill is a small stepping stone towards protections that should already be in place. Protecting food sources, especially Manuma piscine, is critical for maintaining Minnesota's public health by ensuring nutritional security, reducing economic losses, and fostering environmental sustainability. I want to thank my sister Lila June, a historical ecologist from the Dene Nation, for helping me prepare this testimony, and I want to thank you representatives so much for taking on these important leadership roles and for caring for all our communities. Thank you. I'm going to sit here with you for questions.
Sure.
Huh?
Thank you, Chair Hansen. A question for maybe the author or maybe somebody else that you might know. Is there a map of which bodies of water or streams or drainage systems that would be affected by this bill?
Representative Falconer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks for the question. I know that there's a mapping exercise going on. There was an appropriation last year for the DNR to help catalog wild rice waters and find where they are, as well as there are on both the DNR website and I believe Department of Ag, there are maps available where you can look up where wild rice waters have been identified.
Representative Harder.
Thank you, Chair Hansen. Well, if the agency could provide a map to the group here, that would be beneficial, because if you know how drainage systems work, that could affect many counties, right? Because like I take for the drainage system I'm on. I mean, some of that comes from as far away as Renville or even further west that comes towards where I live. So there's many drainage systems that may drain into whichever lakes that you're looking at. So if you could provide a map as to who or what would be affected, I would appreciate that. And then.
And Representative Harder, the bill is being laid over. Would be time for the agencies to get that to us. Representative Harder.
And I just have one more question. So if a farmer or a landowner, if they follow whatever label for chemical or pesticide that they're using, they follow the label, the wind, the weather restrictions that are required for their use, Will that be enough to show compliance under this bill?
Representative Falconer.
I'd like to phone a friend with nonpartisan. However, it's my intent that yes, these are now nested within the same regulations as pollinators and human health with regards to pesticide use and management plans. And so, as long as those criteria are being met, this does establish new, potentially new guidelines for where wild rice waters are located in proximity to where pesticides or herbicides would be used. But in that scenario, it would be the same set of guidelines that currently exists.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. And Representative Falconer, your last response says it would be similar to what is currently being done. So a question that doesn't have to be answered today, how would this make anything different in terms of the enforcement action? And I did have one question to ask you in a definition on page 1. The wild rice water is identified in the definition now as supporting wild rice production or capable of supporting wild rice production. What's the difference?
Representative Falconer.
Thank you. I'll answer the second part first. I forget which amendment it was, but it took out the capable of and inserted uncultivated to clarify that we're talking about naturally occurring stands and where those are currently located. So the capable of language has been removed and is no longer part of this. Can you please remind me what your first question was?
Well,
Representative Anderson.
thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I didn't see that change in your amendment, so I apologize for that. But in response to Vice Chair Harder's question, you said it would be similar or the same as is currently being enforced in terms of some kind of enforcement action. So my question to you is, what would be different under this bill in terms of enforcement action?
Okay. All right, thank you, Chair. So what would be different would be when the tribal governments, as the bill requests, and MIAC, U of M, and the agencies, as they look at what the pesticides are and the potential for adverse effects to the health of wild rice, those would then be implemented within these. And so it would be, it's through that lens of pesticide use with regards to this specific plant. And how to and best practices and mitigation efforts to preserve the rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not a question, but just wanted to say thank you for bringing this bill forward and starting this important conversation as we look for ways that we can thread the needle between, providing food and the sort of production crops that we need for our state, and also upholding our treaty obligations that we need to make sure that we are abiding by as a state. So I just want to say thank you to Rep. Falconer, all of the testifiers today, for your moving testimony and really highlighting the importance of Mahnomen to the state, to the indigenous people of this land, and to the entire country and world. So thank you all.
Representative Falconer, any closing comments?
Yeah, and I'll be quick. I know you've got a lot to get to. To me, this isn't about anything about banning pesticides or anything like that. It's just giving rice the special consideration when we're looking at the management plans and the application of these. I mean, it's just remarkable to me that in Minnesota that we do have a naturally occurring and naturally supported crop. And I don't mean crop as in a pejorative word, but when we're talking about commercializing food, it very much is a $60 million industry. And what other food, when you go to the grocery store, can you think of that is the exact same today as it was 1,000 years ago? And that is just particularly just special and unique, on top of it being a sacred cultural grain for our indigenous Minnesotans. So really this is about just adding that lens of thought and care when we're talking about pesticide management plans, and with regards to rice, and I would love to work with you if there's anything. I'll get the map, answer any other questions, and just if there's a way we could get the bill into shape that could be supported, I'd be happy to work with whoever wants to. So thank you.
I renew my motion that House File 3898 as amended be laid over. The bill is laid over. Next up, House File 3957, Representative Vang. Representative Vang, would you like to move that House File 3957 be re-referred to the Ways and Means Committee?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Representative Vang, I believe you have an A1 author's amendment. Would you like to move your amendment and explain it briefly?
Yes, I'd like to move the A1 amendment. This amendment just removes the agreed sections that's referenced out of the bill and puts it in the shape that I would like to be in.
Representative Vang moves the A1 amendment to get the bill in the form the author would like. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion prevails. The A1 amendment is adopted. Representative Vang, to the bill as amended.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. The idea of this bill came from my time serving on the Outdoor Heritage Council, where they select vetted grant projects to recommend to the legislature. And as we look into the era of more oversight of funding, this bill aligns AFREC with that purpose. This is not to suggest that there was any misuse of the funds, but as the legislature reins in on where our dollars should be going or where they're going, it just aligns our purpose for more oversight. For those unfamiliar with AFREC, it is a 12-member council who are either farmers or provide agricultural professional services with a mission to fund research and education on agriculture fertility that is environmentally and economically sound. And so each year, MDA announces its RFPs for projects using funds generated from fertilizer sales. And although it is dependent on previous year's fertilizer sales, AFREC typically awards over $1 million annually. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to take any questions.
I believe we have a couple testifiers. Commissioner Tom Peterson, Minnesota Department of Agriculture. Welcome, Commissioner, and state your name for the record.
Mr. Chair, members, Tom Peterson, Commissioner for the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, and, worked on AFREC for, 20 years, and really, especially right now with fertilizer prices and everything, really highlights the need of why this was created years ago and the process that's been taking, working through the important parts of research and candidly, right now, too, as we're cutting back at the federal level on research, it's really important that Minnesota has this type of research. I feel strongly that the process has worked well, having worked with it for many years, but open to process changes on it. As the department, our main concern is with the stricken language that starts in 2.7. Where it removes the commissioner being able to use up to $80,000. And sorry, Matt, Representative Vang, I can still call you Madam Chair, but Representative Vang for not being able to talk to you about this. But it's unclear to us who would administer this and how it would be funded. And so as the Department of Ag, we take our grant awards and our process very seriously, and it does cost money. And that investment to us is really important as we maintain the integrity of our accounts and of our grants. And so that would be the concern we have. It also, to us, is not clear then who would award the grants. We assume we would, but it could be a third-party entity perhaps, and then what's the control measure for that? So those are just things that we wanted to bring up. We also have people that work on AFREC, our staff that are here today to adjust that. And again, just one of the concerns I wanted to raise.
Thank you. Jeff Pagel, Minnesota Farm Bureau Federation. Welcome. State your name for the record.
Chair Hansen, members of the committee, my name is Jeff Pagel. Along with my family, I'm a third-generation dairy farmer from Iota. In addition to the dairy, we also farm corn, soybeans, alfalfa, oats, and cover crops. I also serve on the Minnesota Farm Bureau Board of Directors and represent Farm Bureau on the AFRAC Council, the Ag Fertilizer Research and Education Council. Currently, I serve as chair of that committee. I'm here to speak in opposition of House File 3957. AFRAC, the 15-member council, is funded by farmers and led by farmers and other ag organizations, researchers, and experts. The dollars that farmers pay into the program through the fertilizer tonnage fee go toward practical research that enables better decisions on the farm, helps improve soil health, and protect water quality. AFRAC reviews research proposals. We use a peer review process from outside peer reviewers and selects projects for the funding. Additionally, in 2024, the council was broadened to add representation from the Minnesota Institute for Sustainable Agriculture, the Minnesota Soil Health Coalition, and an expert in public health and an expert in water quality. This bill would take away the council's authority to make project selections and turn it into a body that merely makes funding recommendations to legislative committees. This would create uncertainty and put more distance between the people paying into the system and the decisions being made. Further, it risks politicizing a project selection process that has worked best when it is driven by agricultural expertise and real-world need. If the legislature believed enough in AFRAC that it was worthy of reauthorizing 2 years ago, it should also trust the council to keep doing the job that it was designed to do. For those reasons, I respectfully ask you to oppose House File 3957. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to testify for or against the bill? Anyone else in the audience? Questions from members? Representative Lawrence.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. And I was hoping our testifier might stay. I think he'll probably have questions. But Representative Vang, a couple questions for you is how much of the Minnesota Department of Agriculture's budget goes into this program?
Representative Vang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe perhaps Commissioner Peterson might be able to answer the question more, but it is, we authorize the department to raise the fertilizer tonnage sales. So it'll be through that funds the AFRIC.
Representative Lawrence.
Yep, Mr. Chair, thank you. Representative Vang, so is there a dollar, from what I understand, all the dollars that go into this program come from producers. They come from private industry. They're not state dollars that we've granted on any level. And I'm just asking for verification on that. There's no state funding of this program in particular. Am I correct on that?
Representative Vang.
Mr. Chair, yes, that's correct. I will also say it is also the legislature that establishes the fee. And so it is also, I think, part of our authority to look into where the dollars are being spent to.
Okay, thank you. No further
Representative
questions.
Lawrence. Any other questions? Representative Gander.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe it's evident to everyone else in the room, but to me, I want to ask, what is our concern or what is the problem that would be solved by changing how these funds are administered?
Representative Vang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I mentioned earlier, this is not to suggest there's been any misuse of the funds. I think as we look into right now, look into more oversight to where funding dollars are being spent, I think this is just to add consistency amongst all departments and agency levels to make sure that we are aware of where the dollars are. And I think over the years, perhaps the legislature has created councils, just like in the legacy amendment, to oversee these funds. And the only difference is that for AFRIC, there's no legislative member that sits on that council. In the legacy fund, there are legislative members that do sit in those councils. And so I think this is just kind of to help level the consistency amongst all departments and agencies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Members, any questions? Representative Vang, for the gas tax, we don't have gas tax users distribute the gas tax, right? I mean, is that
That's-
correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Vang, my obvious question is, why are we doing this? You say there's not been a problem to this date over the past 20 years. The funding has been used very well. Again, why are we doing this? Why are you trying to do this?
Representative Vang.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's about making sure there's fairness amongst all the pots of funding that we have in the legislature. I know that many members, we have various interests and maybe favoritism towards certain groups or interest groups about who should get funding. And I think ensuring that the council is able to make recommendations and for the legislature to really be able to hone in on where these dollars are going can make it more consistent among various agencies and groups. I don't see why the legacy, as co-chair of legacy, why the councils only get to make recommendations, but for other councils they don't. They get to have more authority on where the grants dollars are being recommended. And so I think it's just making it fair amongst all levels and being consistent with that.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I think as Representative Lawrence pointed out, there's a big difference here in that this is a farmer-funded program, receives no state money, and I also find it curious you deleted the section for the Department of Ag to pay for this. So I would ask nonpartisan staff of Mr. Savory, is there a fiscal note with this? And who is going to pay for the work that this bill would entail?
Mr. Savory.
Chair and members, the way that the kind of the new establishment that the way that the bill would work under Chair Vang's proposal would essentially allow the legislature to appropriate directly out of the account. So in the case of an appropriation, the legislature would establish who would be the fiscal agent in that particular case. And you can imagine in many cases, if it was an AFREC-related appropriation, it would most likely fall upon the department. But with the $80,000 carve-out now gone, it will be up to the legislature to determine a new process going forward.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Savory. We've tried this before. When the extension was up a couple of years ago, and by a groundswell of support from the people that have validity with the program, it was retained, extended, and I'm a farmer, and yet I would trust the people that work in the fertilizer industry to do a better job than me in determining which projects to fund. I think the people on my side would agree that there are people who specialize in nutrients, nutrient loss, nutrient management, and to me, they seem in a much better position to determine the best use of these farmer-collected funds. And with that, Mr. Chair, I would ask for a roll call and would ask members on my side to think deeply about supporting this bill.
Representative Vang.
Closing remarks, Mr. Chair, or is there?
I had a comment, and I think Representative Smith has a comment. So Representative Smith.
Thank you, Chair Hansen. Thank you, Representative Vang. I think just adding another layer to this conversation, one of our themes. Oh, this is not on, sorry. Adding another layer to this conversation, like one of our themes this session is about public accountability for public dollars. And this is a program that is public dollars. Yes, it's put in by people who are producing or buying the fertilizer. But I mean, that's how our public funds work. We get them from sales taxes all the time. We get them from income taxes. But it becomes public money where it's supposed to be for the public good. And we're talking in all kinds of committees about how we need to make sure that we are holding people, whether it's for-profit, nonprofit, even intergovernment agencies, accountable for the public money that they receive. So it sounds like Representative Vang is continuing to work with the department, and I'm sure the department is working on this and getting it to a place where we can have balance on this. But I mean, outside of even just the funds themselves, MDA does administer this program. That's public resources, that's public time. And making sure that that is done responsibly, and that we as a legislator, as the representatives of the people, have oversight of this, I don't think is a I don't know, trying to take away responsibility from farmers or even disregarding their knowledge. Of course, we will use that knowledge, and the council will use that knowledge, but that representatives of the people, we on this committee as well as others in this legislature, should be looking out for these public funds as we do in many other committees. So I just wanted to add that layer. Thank you, Chair.
Following up on Representative Smith, I think it's curious, almost every day we hear about concerns about fraud and government's not doing enough to do something about fraud. And I can remember when Legacy was passed, there were hunting and fishing groups that said this was their money. It's always interesting when it's their money, when stakeholders say it's their money, when the legislature or the people have to pass the fees. Of course, stakeholders would like authority to distribute money. I mean, I think we've heard about that, direct appropriations. So it's curious that for some, we have to put in safeguards over and over and over again. Same arguments were made, but we've done it. We've made those safeguards. And here Representative Vang is bringing something that just says that the stakeholders would still make the recommendation, but the legislature would have to pass it. I think I've heard Senator Drazkowski make that case on multiple commissions and councils over the years. So I find it curious that consistency, I guess, is a challenge, but we're having this discussion. I think it's an important one when we're looking at these issues of how do we protect taxpayer money and how do we protect the money that we vote for, and when we establish these councils through the state. We're still responsible for them because we create them, manage them, and may dispose of them. Representative Vang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank the committee for giving this bill a hearing. I hear your concerns, Commissioner Peterson, and so I'm definitely open to working with you on the language. And I understand that it is the MDA's staff and their capacity that's helping AFRIC going through this process. And so I'm happy to work with the department to look into that language and perhaps even reinstate it. And with that, Mr. Chair, I will renew my motion to refer it to Ways and Means.
Representative Vang, reduce your motion, House File 3957, as amended, be re-referred to the Ways and Means Committee. The clerk will, a roll call being requested, the clerk will take the roll.
Chair Hansen.
Yes.
Hansen, aye. Chair Anderson.
Anderson, no.
Anderson, no. Vice Chair Smith.
Aye.
Smith, aye. Vice Chair Harder. No. Harder, no. Representative Agbaje.
Yes.
Agbaje, aye. Representative Burkle.
Burkle, no.
Burkle, no. Representative Frederick.
Aye.
Frederick, aye. Representative Gander.
No.
Gander, no. Representative Gottfried.
Gottfried, aye.
Gottfried, aye. Representative Jacob. Jacob, no. Representative Lawrence.
Representative Lawrence, no.
Lawrence, no. Representative Lee.
Lee, aye.
Lee, aye. Representative Nelson.
Nelson, no.
Nelson, no. Representative Vang.
Aye.
Vang, aye.
The vote is 7-7. That is a tie. The motion does not prevail. Representative Vang, would you like to move House File 4372 be referred to the Ways and Means Committee?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
This is the meat processing, training, and retention incentive grants. Representative Vang, to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House File 4372 is relating to a program that we created, this committee created in 2023 to help transition new communities and get trained in meat cutting. The program, dubbed Train and Retain by the department, has been a success, but the regional development organizations charged with administering the grants haven't expended all the funds. So this bill will extend the appropriation for up to 3 years, providing additional time to complete these projects. The costs of this bill, as we don't anticipate any. I did request a fiscal note, though it did not make it to the deadline, I did get it confirmed that there is no cost to the bill. And with that, I do have some testifiers.
First, Stu Laurie, Minnesota Farmers Union. Welcome to the committee and state your name for the record.
Thank you, Chair Hansen and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Stu Laurie, Government Relations Director for Minnesota Farmers Union. And on behalf of our members, I'm glad to share our strongest support for HF 4372, Representatives Vang's effort to extend the appropriation for meat processing, train, and retain grants. This is a program that our organization, this committee, worked hard to create in 2023, and it builds on our broader body of work to support local and regional meat processors. During the pandemic, of course, we all learned what Farmers Union members and of others have known well, that when you got 4 multinational companies that control the meat processing industry, it's brittle, it's prone to failure, and it doesn't serve workers, consumers, or farmers particularly well. And so we started working to promote local and regional, redoubled our efforts to support regional, local processing plants. And when we went around, when MDA went around to those processing plants and said, hey, can you increase your capacity? Can you take a few more hogs during that really acute shortage of processing? The number one issue that they identified was the shortage of workforce. A lot of these were generational plants. They had aging folks working at them. And so we, this committee supported the creation of training programs at the technical colleges. For the first time in a generation, you could get training in meat cutting in Minnesota outside of a correctional facility. And we also, this committee supported training for secondary students, and we also created these train and retain grants. And I can say from talking with members who are working with these grants, it's working. You know, just one story, talking with one of our members who, worked with a family, a processor was short of employees in St. Louis County. They were able to work with a family in the metro. They were actually able to relocate to St. Louis County. A member of that family took on a role in that generational plant, and that's going well. Other folks have been able to attend those technical training programs, other important pieces. So it's working. We'd appreciate this extension. A couple points particular to the extension. First, this funding is already obligated to the regional development organizations. They have letters in your packet. It's a modest extension. It's 3 years, but really for grants made in the first year of the biennium, that would be a 1-year extension. For grants made in the second year, there'd be a 2-year extension. It's not unlike the flexibility that we have in statute for programs funded under the Agri Fund, but that the Agri Fund, this is not part of the Agri Fund. And then finally, this work takes time. We're recruiting folks, helping folks find opportunities at processing facilities. That's a big change in your life, to go back to school, to plan to succeed a generational owner at a plant in rural Minnesota. And so, that's part of the story of why this extension is needed. So thank you to Chair Vang for championing this, both in 2023 and helping the program continue going forward. And before I close, I'll just share, for the sake of time, the support of Minnesota Farm Bureau and also the Land Stewardship Project of this effort. So thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to testify over
Thank you, Chair Hansen. There, we got it right today. So, thank you for this bill, Representative Vang. And if I'm understanding correctly, on I think it's 10.12 is where this section that really starts with. And if my math is correct, it looks like we had there was about 544,000 of the grant that had been allocated, 222,000 first year and 322 the second year. Do you know how much of those grants have been able to be expended and how much has gone out?
Mr. Chair, maybe the department might know, or Stu, perhaps you might know. Okay. I see someone coming up.
Welcome to the committee and state your name for the record.
Right. Good afternoon. I'm Ashley Bruss. I work as the Assistant Director of the Ag Marketing and Development Division at the Department of Agriculture. We were able to encumber about $537,000 of that appropriation. As of about a couple of weeks ago, we had actually expended almost $60,000, and those grantees still have about $477,000 left to spend. But all of the funds have been obligated to those organizations.
Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Chair Hansen, and thank you for this bill. I think it's it definitely shows the need for it, and as the testifier said, that it takes time to get this through, and I think many of us remember that every town used to have a locker plant, and quite often time you learn from it's generational knowledge that has passed on, and when I talk to locker plant owners, one of the biggest challenges is hiring qualified and knowledgeable individuals that know meat cutting, and that it's missed a generation or two, and there's definitely a desire to get back into that, and this training is much needed, and a lot of this has been spoken for, but not able to get the funds out the door yet. So I think that's something that I definitely support doing, and I'm not sure if it's for the department or for the author, but is a one-year extension sufficient, or is that, or are we going to need to be coming back next year for another, or maybe a reauthorization at that point? So, thank you.
Representative Vang.
Yeah, I guess what we know is the program's working, right? Folks are interested in it. We understand that they're brokering, conversations in these relationships. And what I've heard from the development commissions is that they're just ramping up their work. I understand that this was drafted in consultation with them. I will say, more time is always helpful. A point that I forgot to make in my testimony that MDA could speak to, much better, but just as, this is a reimbursement grant too, right? So the reason that the money is encumbered but not spent is, of course, that the processors haven't spent the money paying for education or those kind of incentives. So I don't want to say that more time wouldn't be helpful. I'm sure it would, but I don't know enough to make that ask yet. Thank you.
Representative Nelson, anything else?
I think maybe right now a one-year extension would be good, and this can be looked at next year if we need to do something further on it.
Representative Lawrence.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I think I have a quick question for non-partisan staff. The way I read the change in the language here on page 10.17 to 10.20, would that change affect every preceding grant as well? So all the grants preceding that are listing in the section above would be extended to that 3-year period?
Ms. Mullenbeck.
Thank you, Chair. This would only affect the meat processing, training, and retention grants under paragraph C.
Representative Lawrence.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you said, I didn't hear you correctly, under paragraph what?
Paragraph Z.
Paragraph Z. Okay. Okay. And maybe, Mr. Chair, the follow-up question, why only Z when they're all listed prior to section 5?
Ms. Mullenbeck.
Thank you, Chair. Could you,
I read something wrong.
Okay.
I apologize. I interpreted something wrong as I just looked at it again. I apologize. Thank you for that clarification.
Is there anyone else who wants to testify for or against the questions from members? Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess I'm a little bit confused. The bill language says a 3-year extension. And so a question is the length, and then also if somebody's awarded a grant, for example, and this bill did not get passed, is the rug pulled? Or what happens if this doesn't pass, and what can continue on in how many years if this is passed?
To the department.
Mr. Chair and Representative Anderson, this change would give those existing 4 grantees a total of 3 years each to work on their projects. But it essentially would give one of them an additional one year because because of when that project started in July of 24. So we give them until June of 27 to complete the project. The other 3 projects started in June of 25, so we give them until June of 28 to complete their projects, or an additional 2 years. But that would be enough to get them to the 3-year total.
Representative Anderson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. But again, what if this doesn't pass?
The department.
Mr. Chair, Representative Anderson, if this does not pass, those projects would have to be wrapped up by June 30th of 2026, and they would not be able to spend any of their remaining funds after that time.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank the author for bringing this bill forward. Over the past several years, I've gotten to know many people in my community that are part of the immigrant community as well. And I will say that over the last few months, many of them have worked in processing plants, and many have lived in fear and not gone to work, not gone to training programs because of they're just paying attention to what's going around due to the actions of the federal government. And so I am grateful that Representative Nelson made the comment this program is much needed. I'm glad that that's being recognized, but I just want to point out that part of the reason that this program is needed is because of the terror that was happening in our communities all across the state. So I'm hopeful that we can get this passed, and thank you again for bringing this bill forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to thank the committee and testifiers and department for their work and support on this bill. And with that, I'll renew my motion to refer the House File 4372 to Ways and Means.
Representative Vang renews her motion that House File 4372 be referred to the Ways and Means Committee. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Ayes have it, the motion prevails. Next up is House File 4350 by me.
All right, Chair Hansen, when you are seated, would you like to move your bill?
Yes, I will move House File 4350 as amended to become before the committee. Members, we heard this previously and made a couple of amendments. Co-Chair Anderson, we ran out of time and we're taking some questions. Commissioner Peterson is here as well, so if you'd want to come forward.
All right, I think we're going to move to testifiers then. Commissioner Peterson, when you get settled, go ahead and start your testimony and identify yourself for the record. Thank you for being here.
Mr. Chair, members, Tom Peterson, Commissioner for the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. And I just want to be on the record as being this is our policy bill of supporting the policy bill, and thank Chair Hansen for introducing it. To us, these are the way we put our policy bill together is, talk to our staff, go through what are the things that you really need. To me, these are non-controversial items. And they help our agency do work better, and they address needs that we've seen that need to be addressed. And so you'll see things about agrivoltaics, noxious weeds. And again, the noxious weeds are all put together. Those recommendations come from our Noxious Weed Advisory Committee, which is a really wonderful committee that works on probably a very, very important issue that actually the department gets a lot of questions about. And so you also see some pieces on food handling and items like that. We also have staff that can answer any questions about any of these items. And again, I just urge your consideration. Thanks, Chair Hansen.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else from the public here today who'd like to testify on this?
Mr. Chair, just for the record that at the end of one of the amendments that we passed had a fiscal component, and it would be my intent as the author to bring that back related to fees. So we, to get this to go to the general register, we removed that. So when we deal with fiscal things, it'd be my intent to try to bring that back.
Okay, we have removed that, you said.
We have removed it, yes.
Okay. Chair Anderson, did you have a comment on that? I thought I saw some. No. Okay. We'll move to committee questions and comments then. Representative Lawrence.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Mr. Chair, and a comment that I'd like to make, and we didn't get to it last time when we had this bill before us. So I appreciate the corrections that are all proposed. I'm going to take you to section, the entry upon land section, subdivision 3, 4.23. But as a township supervisor, I think one of the biggest challenges we had was when the assessor would go out to assess the properties, and we got numerous calls from homeowners, what's going on, and so we started implementing processes of contact with that. And I love the position that's taken here about contact. One of the positions I'd like to see added here is how do you wording, but what is something we could add as far as confirmation that contact has been made? And I know I was too late for an amendment. I apologize for that, but that's something that I'd like to see amended, that contact has been made and permission granted. And I think it just alleviates so many challenges with property owners and state or county staff or local staff. Just builds a better relationship that way. So I'll yield to comment.
Yeah. Thank you for that comment, Representative Lawrence. It looks like we have some help from the department to help answer that question. Please identify yourself and answer if you may.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Anthony Cordelet with Minnesota Department of Agriculture, and I oversee the noxious weed program. And Representative Lawrence, that's a great point, and it sounds like you served on the township before, and you know that. This issue came up last year on the Senate side, and it was added in late in the year. And so the entry upon land has not been messed with for years. It actually gave ag inspectors quite a lot, and local weed inspectors, which would be your township supervisors, lots of authority to go on land without permission. There was an issue Senator Draheim brought up to us where there was some concern about entry upon land in his district. We worked on some language. The reason this is coming up again is the way we wrote the language is the way we train our inspectors and our local weed inspectors. Yes, the law says you have a wide range of authority, but so do landowners to say, hey, why are you on my property if you just show up and are walking around? So we put some things in there like make every effort to make contact. I unfortunately wrote the word probable cause in there because I also deal with cannabis programs, and I had criminal law in my mind. And so I caught a lot of static from county attorneys and the Minnesota Associations of Townships because of the level that sets for going onto property. And so really this time around, what we're asking for after Senator Draheim's bill that passed last year is to change probable cause to reasonable cause and widen that out so the level standard of going onto property isn't as high as needing to seek a warrant. I would just end by saying if there's a way we can work with you or any other members to make that language better, we're all up for it, so.
Super.
Representative Lawrence, do you have a follow-up?
No, thank you very much.
All right, and I would say, maybe I shouldn't say this, but this is going to the general register, so working with the bill authors and the department, there is still chances to get that amendment in when it's on the floor.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Representative Gottfried. Oh, you're pointing over here. Oh, I knew the chair was going to say something. I thought you were going to say something. He's going to go second to last. No other ones? Chair Anderson, if you want to say something, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. That is real bipartisanship. Thank you. Just a couple questions or comments. There's maybe just the added language, quite a bit in here about how we would handle these invasive species in terms of research. And, you know, my first thought when we talk about these things is Palmer amaranth, things like that. So is there much being done in terms of research with some of these really dangerous type weeds? Can you fill us in on that?
Go ahead, that's fair.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Representative Anderson, yes, quite a bit, especially with Palmer amaranth. There's a lot going on behind the scenes you don't hear about. We work real closely with Dr. Devlin Serengi, who's the weed scientist now at the University of Minnesota, on different treatments and ways to educate farmers on how to be prepared if we do face a reality where Palmer does establish. So far, we've been lucky that it hasn't. But there's 60 other some weeds on the noxious weed list. Not all of them rise to the level of that importance of research, I would say, but our eradicate list does. And there's quite a few projects going on that are funded by the Terrestrial Invasive Center and University of Minnesota in general and other universities around the state that we've been partnering with.
Okay.
Chair Anderson.
Thank you. Thanks for that. And one other comment, I guess. Page 10, new language on plant biostimulant. I don't know if this is your area.
Quickly departs.
But, you know, we had a new program this year with the Biofertilizer Incentive Program, and from what I heard, it really filled out quickly. Could somebody from the department just come up and talk about the new language of a plant biostimulant, the reason for it, and what they see in the future for, and it is a newer thing that is being used more and more, especially as fertilizer prices keep going up. So the new language, can you explain what it's for and what you're looking for? Thanks.
All right, a fresh testifier from the administration. Please identify yourself and answer Chair Anderson's question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Anderson. The definition for plant biostimulant that was included was included in order to try to increase compliance with the Association of American Plant Food Control Officials Uniform Beneficial Substances Bill. This is something that they're encouraging all states to adopt in their regulation of fertilizers and soil and plant amendments. And so this is meant to increase our consistency with other states across the nation.
And I'm sorry, could you identify yourself for the record?
Yes, my apologies. My name is Tricia Leaf. I am a manager of the Pesticide and Fertilizer and Soil and Plant Amendment Registration Program, as well as a team of pesticide technical scientists.
Thank you very much. Chair Anderson.
Just a quick update then. Can you tell us how that the sign-up went for the Biofertilizer Incentive Program? Are you involved with that program?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
The Biofertilizer Incentive Program that opened up a couple of weeks ago, I think. I heard it was filled. Can you give us the official word on that?
Go ahead.
That would be a different person from the agency that could answer that question for you.
This is why we bring the whole department when we hear these policy bills. Thank you so much. Witness number 4, if I'm keeping count from the administration. If you could identify yourself and then to Chair Anderson's question.
For the record, I am Raj Maan, and I'm the Assistant Division Director at the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. So for the biofertilizer program, we opened that program and we received many applications. So that program is, right now, we have closed the applications for that.
Chair Anderson?
Any idea how many acres were applied for? Or
So there was a Mr. Chair and Representative, the number of acres included all the money that was assigned to us. So the maximum number of acres that was possible, we received this about the same number of applications.
Chair Anderson.
So I think it was
excuse me?
somewhere around 27,000 acres. I don't remember at the top on the top of my head, but I can provide you that information.
Okay, the reason I ask is when the first came out, it said the payments were going to be $15 an acre. That was way too high, and I hope that got lowered and the expectations weren't that the payment was going to be that high. So if you get me the number of acres, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, we will provide you that, Mr. Chair and Representative.
Thank you. Chair Anderson, do you have any more questions? I was kind of hoping we would get another testifier. Chair Hansen, did you have closing comments?
I was getting to closing. Is anybody else? I want members to look on page 10 of the original bill, and that's the plant biostimulant. And I think, this discussion is really important because having a definition of a plant biostimulant, I'm just going to read it so it's in the record, means a substance, microorganism, or mixture thereof that, when applied to seeds, plants, rhizomes, soil, or other growth media, supports, so that's the action verb, supports a plant's nutritional processes independently of the biostimulant's nutrient content and improves, another action verb, nutrient availability, uptake, or use efficiency, tolerance to abiotic stress, and consequent growth, development, quality, or yield. So having that in law, I think, is very important to weed out any products that are snake oil. With that, I would ask for support for the, I would move to the General Register, House File
4350.
4350 as amended, be placed on the General Register.
Chair Hansen renews his motion that House File 4350 as amended be placed on the General Register. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion prevails. And I'm on the next bill, so we'll switch spots.
House File 3692, House File 3692 received a full hearing and testimony on March 9, 2026. No further testimony will be taken. Representative Smith, would you like to move that House File 3692 be re-referred to the Higher Education, Finance, and Policy Committee?
So moved, Chair.
Members, are there any questions for Representative Smith? Representative Smith, would you have any closing comments?
No, I think we had a good hearing on this. Glad to get this moving.
Representative Smith moves his motion that House File 3692 be re-referred to the Higher Education, Finance, and Policy Committee. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. The motion prevails. The motion is adopted. Next up, House File 3085, Representative Anderson, Biofuel Sales Volume Incentive Program established. And we are right on time, Co-Chair Anderson. So. Co-Chair Anderson, would you like to move that House File 4085 come before the committee?
Mr. Chair, that's my motion. House File 4085 be come before the committee today, and thank you.
Co-Chair Anderson to the bill.
Well, Mr. Chair, members, it's a pretty self-explanatory bill, and we're asking for a bunch of money, so we take that into account. But it illustrates, I think the need on a couple of areas. One is to promote the use of ethanol, and the other is to make it more available to the residents of Minnesota. We have heard, and we'll probably hear this from the testifiers as well, the number of gallons of E15, or it's called E88, that's sold in this state at an average savings. I've always seen 15 cents a gallon, but I've also heard up to 20 or 30 cents a gallon, or even higher sometimes. It's a considerable savings to the residents of Minnesota who use this E15. But to do that, stations have to do some work in terms of tanks, signage, lines, pumps, things like that, and it can get to be spendy. We have had a program in the state that helped stations with the cost of making that conversion to be able to handle the higher blend of ethanol. And this is another kind of a bite at the apple, kind of patterned after a similar program in the state of Iowa, where they have a program such as this where they pay after the fact when the gallons have already been pumped and sold. In the case here in Minnesota, we'd have a 5 cent per gallon payment back to the stations to help them with the cost of converting. This would be a 5-year program, but just a one-time appropriation, and a station can apply to the program and be in it for the duration of the years that which they apply. But the maximum then would be a 5-year enrollment in the program. And with that, Mr. Chair, I have a couple of testifiers to talk about the bill and about E15 to be used by hopefully more folks here in the great state of Minnesota.
Thank you. First up, Brian Werner, Minnesota Biofuels Association. Welcome to the committee, and state your name for the record.
Chair Hansen and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Brian Werner. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota Biofuels Association, or MBA. MBA supports House File 4085 to establish a biofuel sales volume incentive program at the Department of Agriculture, and we thank Chair Anderson for bringing it forward. Gasoline prices are climbing. The war in Iran and the effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz have created instability in oil markets and driven up fuel prices for Minnesotans. In the last few weeks, the price of a gallon of gas in Minnesota has risen by 75 cents per gallon, according to AAA. In a time of cost pressures for everything from groceries to utilities and housing, expanding access to lower-priced fuel is a tangible way to help families manage their budgets. E15, a gasoline blend with 15% ethanol that is often marketed as unleaded 88, has consistently been priced lower than E10 every year since entering the Minnesota market in 2013. It has cumulatively saved drivers nearly $80 million since that time, and in 2024, the price difference reached its largest gap on record, with E15 priced on average up to 18 cents per gallon less than E10. E15 is a proven market-based option, delivering real savings to Minnesotans right now, and expanding access will drive further savings. Ongoing global events also highlight another point. E15 is produced here in Minnesota. About 3.8 billion gallons of U.S. consumed gasoline travels through the Strait of Hormuz as crude oil, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. Last year, Minnesota helped produce about 8% of the nationwide total of 16.4 billion gallons of ethanol, which displaced the equivalent of 641 million barrels of oil. Every gallon of ethanol blended into gasoline is displacing a gallon of petroleum that might come from volatile regions or contested shipping lanes around the globe. This bill will help mitigate concerns about gasoline affordability and supply by incentivizing retailers to increase access to E15, a fuel that saves consumers money and strengthens our energy security. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Michael Walls, poet. Welcome. State your name for the record.
Welcome, Chair Hansen and members of the committee. I'm Michael Walls. I'm the Vice President of Public Affairs for Poet LLC. Poet operates 4 bioprocessing facilities in Bingham Lake, Glenville, Lake Crystal, and Preston, Minnesota, and we are members of the Minnesota Ethanol Association's Minnesota Ethanol Producers Association. Poet and the Minnesota Ethanol Producers Association appreciate the opportunity to express our strong support for House File 4085. Providing a volumetric incentive to fuel retailers for the sale of E15 will greatly benefit Minnesota's economy by supporting small business fuel retailers, ensuring dependable grain demand for nearly 25,000 Minnesota farmers, and generating savings for consumers at a time when they need it most. Last year, Minnesotans saved an average of 18 cents per gallon and often more when they filled up with E15. A 5-cent incentive would pay for itself by delivering nearly 4 times the savings on each gallon of E15 sold. If fully utilized, a $5 million annual incentive could yield $18 million or more in savings at the pump across Minnesota. Other states such as Iowa, Missouri, Nebraska, and South Dakota have already enacted similar volumetric sales incentives for E15. Illinois currently offers a sales tax reduction specifically for E15, and additionally, states such as Kansas, Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio have introduced nearly identical 5-cent volumetric incentive bills to expand savings at the pump with E15. In addition to driving significant savings at the pump, House File 4085 would also improve Minnesota's air quality by incentivizing retailers to offer a much cleaner fuel option across the state. E15 has lower life cycle greenhouse gas emissions, lower tailpipe emissions, and lower evaporative emissions compared to E10. Recent research by the University of California, Riverside showed that E15 reduced carbon monoxide, particulates, and volatile organic compounds. Additional research from the EFI Foundation, led by former Energy Secretary Ernie Moniz, similarly concluded that bioethanol blends can help close the gap in reducing emissions from the millions of vehicles that are on the road today and will be in the foreseeable future. Their report suggests that, quote, states should consider expanding current mandates, including establishing requirements for E15 and higher blends in gasoline, end quote. Lastly, a study by Air Improvement, Inc. projected that shifting from E10 to E15 across Minnesota could cut 332,000 metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions annually, equivalent to removing more than 72,000 cars off the road. POET and the Minnesota Ethanol Producers Association extends our thanks to the sponsors of this important legislation, to Governor Walz and Commissioner Peterson for their strong support of E15. We believe that incentivizing fuel retailers to offer E15 will greatly benefit all Minnesotans, and we respectfully ask the committee to support this important bill. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Wes Beck, Minnesota Corn Growers Association, via Zoom.
Co-Chair Hansen and members of the committee. My name is Wesley Beck, and I currently serve as the president of Minnesota Corn Growers Association. I farm together with my family near St. James, Minnesota. We have a very typical southern Minnesota farm, growing corn, soybeans, and hogs, 2 grandchildren, and a Labrador dog. On behalf of Minnesota Corn Growers Association, nearly 7,000 dues-paying members, I want to thank Co-Chair Anderson for bringing House File 4085 forward. A key priority for Minnesota corn growers is to expand access and use of higher ethanol blends like unleaded 88, which is a fuel containing 15% ethanol available for use in all vehicle models 2001 and newer. That helps to improve air quality and reduce carbon emissions while giving drivers a higher octane fuel at a lower price. A single kernel of corn not only produces ethanol from the starch of the kernel, but also a high-value, protein-rich, dried distiller's grain as a source for livestock feed and other co-products. Co-product utilization at Minnesota's 19 ethanol plants has resulted in greater efficiency, and as a result, today's corn ethanol reduces greenhouse gases emissions by 46% on average compared to gasoline. Not only does blending ethanol with gasoline result in lower carbon emissions, but it also causes reductions in particulate matter, carbon monoxide, and nitrogen oxides, which can create smog. The carbon emission reduction profile of today's corn ethanol has been verified by the U.S. Department of Energy and Agriculture, the California Air Resources Board, and academic institutions ranging from the University of Illinois to Harvard, MIT, and the University of California, Davis. Ethanol was first blended in our fuel supply to help fight air pollution and smog, and a key reason why Minnesota started using ethanol blends in the metropolitan area back in 1992. Ethanol is a key ingredient in our fuel supply that not only acts as an octane booster, but also displaces harmful aromatic hydrocarbons. In 2021, the Hormel Institute released a study focused on the reduction of these harmful aromatics and the potential cancer risks that they cause. House File 4085 will provide a 5-cent per gallon incentive to fuel stations that start offering E88. It would be an alternative pathway other than the infrastructure grant program for a station that may only need minimal upgrades to begin offering unleaded 88, or they have been considering moving toward offering the fuel, and the incentive would help them to make that step. The ethanol industry is not only crucial to corn farmers' economic vitality, but higher blends of ethanol in fuel provides multiple benefits to Minnesota consumers, communities, and the economy. Unleaded 88 provides a cheaper option while also providing higher octane and increased air quality without sacrificing vehicle efficiency. In 2025, unleaded 88 saved consumers an average of 14 cents per gallon, with consumers often seeing 20, 30, or even 50 cents per gallon of savings at some locations. Minnesota recently surpassed 558 stations offering unleaded 88, with record sales of over 144 million gallons sold. But with over 2,000 fuel stations in Minnesota, there is still room to grow. We'd like to thank Co-Chair Anderson for bringing this bill, and thank you to the committee for the opportunity to testify on House File 4085.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to testify for or against this bill? Anyone else in the audience? Questions from members? Representative Smith.
Thank you, Chair Anderson, for this bill. So let's kind of take the science part of ethanol fuel to the side here. I just want to talk about the business structure because I'm a little confused where this new incentive would fit in. I understand the argument that the infrastructure to actually pump this particular kind of fuel is expensive, and so it might be something that local gas owners wouldn't want to install. But for that, we have the agri-biofuels infrastructure grants to help them with that initial cost. My understanding of this program in this bill is simply that they would get a subsidy for the amount of volume of sale that they would make already with something they're already able to sell. So I guess I don't understand the incentive structure. Like, how is this going to increase the usage of this fuel? I guess I'll leave it there broad, and I might have follow-up questions, Chair.
Representative Anderson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair and Representative Smith. Yeah, you mentioned two programs, and an eligible station could not utilize both programs. If they've taken money, funding from the infrastructure build-out, they would not be eligible for this program. And in this program, and by the way, that infrastructure program is a biannually approved program which may or not be funded in the future. We hope it is, but that's not a sure thing either. This one would be kind of an after-the-fact payment if a station that had not been pumping E15 and hadn't taken the other program possibility, they could upgrade to whatever extent they had to, and say they sold 1,000 gallons of E15, they would get a 5-cent per gallon payment back from the state after they had sold that and then showed proof that they had in fact pumped that many gallons of fuel. So it's an after-the-fact payment based on their volume.
Representative Smith.
Thank you for that answer, Chair. I guess I would understand why, if you're selling this fuel, you would like this, grant structure. But I just wonder, like, for example, let's use the dairy industry. Like, should we provide a volume-based dairy industry where if you're selling a certain amount of milk from Minnesota, you get cents back and the taxpayers paying that? I don't know exactly how that is going to be anything other than potentially a handout to a certain amount of businesses rather than incentivizing sort of the the larger structure of this is I guess my question. Does that make sense? My question is, if it's after the fact, how is this going to increase the usage of these fuels rather than simply being an added incentive of an industry that we are already incentivizing in other ways?
Representative Anderson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Representative Smith. Again, there's going to be a cost involved to do this, and a station may not undertake that cost unless they had some kind of an assurance such as this. That's a business decision, one that each station would have to make for itself. Other states are doing this. We mentioned, the testifiers mentioned Iowa, other states as well. Theirs is more of a tax credit type of thing, but it's to incentivize the use of more ethanol for the benefits that were mentioned by the testifiers. And the bottom line to me is it's a win-win because it's a higher octane fuel, cleaner, and it's cheaper. I mean, I think we all would drive around town to save a penny a gallon on gas, and here's an automatic 15, 18-cent gallon savings if you can have a station that offers this E15. So to me, it makes a lot of sense. It saves Minnesota consumers money over the long haul, and that's why I support the program. And I know funding's going to be an issue, but at least it's out there, and we can, I think, see the value of something like this to encourage more use of Minnesota products, and again, help the environment and have consumers save some money at the same time.
Representative Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the interest of time, maybe I'll just share some comments. I really appreciate some of the testifier acknowledging the President Trump's illegal war in Iran causing gas prices to go up and not more affordable for Minnesotans. And I think that when we look at this program, it's not going to start until 2028. And so how is that going to help us as we struggle paying for gasoline, every day and as we move forward? And $5 million for $50,000 a grant, I think just looking at some of the federal data, household right now, a household per year spend roughly $2,000 to $2,800 for gasoline a year. And I think that might be a better way for us to consider if we really do care about affordability and gas prices in the state of Minnesota right now because of the illegal war in Iran. And so I just feel like, there's choices that we have to make at the legislature, and I think that this is something that we all should think about before we move forward with supporting a program like this to incentivize, a program that's not necessarily going to help out Minnesotans right now and today as we move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Anderson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair and Representative Lee. I would like if we could work on things we can actually impact here in Minnesota. And I know there's concerns about what's happening halfway around the world. I can't control that. I don't think you can either. But let's work on what's best for the people of Minnesota.
Just a comment before we close and go to closing comments. As legislators, we can change a lot of laws and write laws, but we can't change the laws of thermodynamics. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, but merely converted from one form to another. And things are cheaper when the externalized costs of those of production are transferred to the public to pick up the cleanup costs, whether it's nitrates in water, whether it's neonicotinoids in our wildlife, or in our air, or in our water. So there are costs that may not be considered, but are borne. And, I think it's important to have this debate. We've had a couple committees now where we've had the discussion on ethanol, and I wanted to make sure I gave Co-Chair Anderson this bill to hear and to give him the hearing. Any closing comments, Co-Chair Anderson?
Mr. Chair, thank you for allowing the bill to be heard after not having committee last week. I appreciate you making time for it. Thank you. Yeah, there's feelings on crop rotations, things like that. I will say that going to an E15 blend in gasoline in Minnesota would not necessarily have to increase the number of acres of corn grown in Minnesota. It would just give a better market for the acres that we currently grow. And Again, I think it's a win-win situation for consumers and farmers of our state. And with that, Mr. Chair, I renew my motion that House File 4085 be laid over.
Chair Anderson renews his motion that House File 4085 be laid over. The bill is laid over. We are adjourned.